In 1978, temporarily unable to continue work on Noah's Ark, Ron Wyatt took his two sons, Danny and Ronnie, to a site in Egypt he believed might be where the Redsea Crossing took place. When they arrived at the site on the Gulf of Aqaba, they found a Phoenician-style column lying on the beach. The water had eroded away the inscription, but in 1984, Ron found a matching column on the opposite shore in Saudi Arabia, still standing, with the inscription still intact. He was later able to translate the words Pharaoh, Mizraim, Death, Edom, Yahweh, and Solomon from this second column, and from this he believes these columns were erected by King Solomon and dedicated to Yahweh for the great miracle of the crossing of the sea on dry land. Israel was occupying the Sinai Peninsula at this time in 1978 and moved this first column from the beach and set it in concrete across the road, as you can see here. Diving at this site, they filmed numerous coral-encrusted chariot parts, such as these two chariot wheels still attached to an axle, one wheel flat on the ground and the other in the air. This is a six-spoked wheel. They found a vast amount of artifacts which loudly attest to the miracle which occurred here. Horse and human skeletal remains are still preserved by the coral, as are chariot cabs without wheels, wheels without cabs, some wheels on axles, and some not. He retrieved a chariot wheel hub, which he presented to Nasif Mohammed Hassan, who was the director of antiquities in Cairo, Egypt. But the most astounding find was this gold-veneered four-spoke chariot wheel, which he was able to video in March of 1988, but he was unable to retrieve it as the wood had disintegrated, leaving only a thin gold shell. There were many factors which led Ron to this site, but three were most compelling. First, in order for the Israelites to have left Egypt proper, they would have had to have begun their journey to the Red Sea on the eastern side of the Gulf of Suez. This left only the Gulf of Aqaba. Second, there is only one place along the shoreline of the Gulf of Aqaba which could hold the perhaps 3 million people. This area is so large it can be seen from this satellite photo. And finally, when Ron studied the bathymetric maps of the British Admiralty in London, he saw a perfect underwater pathway led across the Gulf at this point. On either side of this line across the Gulf of Aqaba, the waters were 5,000 feet deep, dropping off like a deep gorge. But here, at this precise spot, was an area leading across which gently sloped at a 6-degree angle to a depth of only 900 to 1,000 feet in the center. As Ron and the boys journeyed across the Sinai to this site, they noticed large boulders pushed over to the sides of the wadis, or canyons, allowing caravans and travelers to pass through. But as they dove into the Gulf, about 1.5 miles out and 200 feet deep, they were thrilled to see this same stone-cleared pathway continued and was still evident in the crystal-clear waters. With the overwhelming evidence of the chariot parts scattered across the Gulf, Ron knew that Mount Sinai was in Saudi Arabia. Studying maps, he saw that Jabal el-Lawz fit the biblical description of this holy mountain. Unable to get a visa to enter Saudi Arabia, Ron and his two sons finally decided to enter without one. He had learned that the normal procedure if someone were caught without a visa there was to escort the visitor to the border and see that they did not re-enter. They found Mount Sinai with the altar and much more still intact in this uninhabited area. But as they were leaving, they were abruptly arrested and imprisoned for 78 days, accused of being Israeli spies. When they were finally released, they were told that a man had contacted the Saudi embassy and reported the Wyatts to be Israeli spies pretending to be archaeologists. This man had been a trusted friend who had worked with Ron on Noah's Ark.
Ronald Wyatt and his sons are with us in the studios of our Nashville affiliate WTVF to tell us all about it. Gentlemen, good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Wyatt, you there in the middle,
yes.
Your sons on either side. Why did you, I didn't know that Mount Sinai was in Saudi Arabian territory. Why did you think it was?
We found some chariot parts that looked like the chariots found in King Tut's tomb in the Gulf of Aqaba, west of this Jebel El Lawz. We found these at depths from 60 feet out to 200 feet and over a stretch of about 1.5 miles. And we believe that that was the crossing site. And so in the biblical narrative, they arrived at Mount Sinai after crossing the Red Sea. The language in the Bible indicates that they stayed in a mountain, enclosed in a mountain. So an aerial map showed that this Jebel El Lawz had a large valley enclosed in the rim of an ancient volcano. There's about 5,000 acres in there. We felt this was the place. And in Exodus 24:4 and in Leviticus 6:28, 11:33, and 15:12, it tells of some artifacts that were to be found. There was to be 12 pillars of stone and an altar and some pottery. And so this is why we looked at that particular mountain.
From the beach in Egypt on the Gulf of Aqaba, we have gazed across the water with anguish for many years, knowing that Moses led the great multitude across the Red Sea at this exact spot. Ron Wyatt knew in 1978 that Mount Sinai lay beyond that distant shore.